From the WRAL News Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina, this is the WRAL Daily Download, an in-depth conversation on a story worth talking about.
Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Amanda Lamb. In today's deep dive conversation with WRAL reporter Cullen Browder, we're going to talk about the continued fallout from the shooting death of Wake County Deputy Ned Byrd. Now, earlier this week, we talked with reporter Chelsea Donovan about the shooting, the arrests, and the investigation. But there is a lot more to this story, as Cullen Browder learned through his investigation of some pretty serious allegations against the sheriff and his command staff. Cullen, welcome to the program. Thanks for being here.
Great to be with you.
It's hard to imagine that anybody would have hard feelings about the officers who helped solve this case and then rallied around Deputy Byrd's family, attended the funeral. So talk to me a little bit about how these allegations came to light. How'd you learn about them?
Well, frankly, there was an avalanche of complaints, concern in and outside of the sheriff's office. And a photojournalist for WRAL that you know very well, you worked with for years and years, is Chad Flowers. And he has a lot of law enforcement sources. So we just started hearing more and more complaints and concerns about some things that were going on with the investigation and then after, and then dealings with Ned Byrd's family. So we decided to try and get through a lot of the concerns and get down to the facts on that.
So part of this, some of the officers who were very close to Ned Byrd, who worked with him, were reassigned, specifically 3 canine officers, including Devin Richardson, who is apparently what he believes was demoted, according to sources close to this situation, to work in the jail. And he was the one who presented the flag, the American flag from the casket at Ned Byrd's funeral to the family. Does this make any sense to you?
It's hard to see that it makes any sense. So now, generally, the sheriff would be the person to present the flag. The family specifically requested Devin Richardson present the flag to the sister because she grew a connection to that unit who worked with Ned Byrd. When she got into town after his murder for the funeral, the family got frustrated because they felt like they should be given more information about the investigation. And you well know a lot of families have those kinds of concerns. They want a ton of information, and they don't always get it from law enforcement. So there was a very contentious meeting between the family and the sheriff. And then after the funeral, there was a long list of reassignments, some promotions, reassigned. You could look at it and go, well, does that really make any sense? Because consider a canine officer. It takes months and months and months to get certified with a particular dog. You get shifted off that, you move someone in, you have to start from scratch. You have to start all over again. And particularly with Devin Richardson going from canine to detention, and he wouldn't talk to us on the record, but we had a number of sources, certainly through Chad, who just said he was devastated by that move.
Yeah, and when you're talking about the training of the canine officers and the pairing of them with a dog that's also trained, I mean, that's a step backwards financially, I would think, for the department, that they would have to now begin that process again.
Absolutely. I mean, that takes time. It takes money in terms of training and matching up these deputies. And to be moved from canine into detention, you don't even have to be deputized to work in detention. So that certainly could be considered a demotion.
And you brushed on this, but when you're doing a story like this, people who have a job and they don't want to lose their job are afraid to talk. So how do you go about getting this information? I mean, you have to confirm it through multiple sources, I would imagine, especially because you don't have a lot of people on the record.
Correct. And I think a lot of people say, well, why aren't you reporting everything that I'm hearing? All these rumors are going around. Why are you not reporting this? Well, part of the reason is we have to have people who will go on the record. And in many cases, just like you said, people don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to speak out, and they know that they're at risk if they do that. So then we have to work around through sources, people who specifically talked with individuals who know exactly what's going on. So then we have to build almost an army of sources to make sure we can filter through what's rumor and what's actually true.
Did the sheriff's office respond to your inquiry about these reassignment issues specifically?
So I reached out that morning, particularly about the reassignments, because we were able to obtain the document that showed all of the reassignments and confirmed that it was legitimate. And I reached out and said, what's happening here? We're hearing from people who are very concerned, feel like it's retaliation in some way. What can you explain? And I got a statement later in the day. The sheriff wouldn't talk to me on camera, basically saying that reassignments are done to benefit the community and also to benefit deputies by broadening their experience. And then in terms of specific reassignments, all I got was that's still confidential under the law.
So this is also something that has been brought to the attention of the county commissioners, including the chairman, Sig Hutchinson. Are they concerned, and what do they plan to do about it?
Sig Hutchinson told me specifically they are concerned, but then he points out immediately, we're talking about a sheriff who's an elected official, and the county commission has limited authority over the sheriff. It's just the way North Carolina law works. So they intended to have a sit-down conversation to talk about this, but he made it clear that they can't just throw him out of office. It just doesn't work that way.
Understood. We'll be back after the break with more of the WRAL Daily Download, where we're going to speak more with reporter Colin Browder about the document he was able to obtain from the funeral home with some strange requests that have Ned Byrd's family up in arms. Welcome back to the WRAL Daily Download. We're speaking with reporter Colin Browder about the strange turn of events within the Wake County Sheriff's Office after the shooting death of Deputy Ned Byrd while on duty. So, Colin, one of the issues that the family has specifically been upset about involved what happened with the funeral home, that there was apparently a letter or a request from the sheriff's office to the funeral home regarding the belongings that Ned Byrd had on him when he died. And it seemed to be pretty insensitive. Tell me about that, and how did you get that document?
That really surprised us when you look at that document. So it's a funeral home document, kind of standard that, a person who comes in, they have certain belongings and they need to document the situation. So he's got a uniform, he's got, badges and certain personal effects that technically belong to the Wake County Sheriff's Office. Well, on this document that we were able to obtain, Chad Flowers again was able to obtain it, a photograph of it. It lists all these personal effects, the uniform, whatnot, and then on the right side of it, it's handwritten. It's an employee from the funeral home, basically writing what she was told by the sheriff's office, that we need all this back, uniform, and if you have to cut it off of his body, his shirts and his pants, do it. So that clearly raised concerns, but we did not have permission to put it out there initially. So I think a lot of people heard about it and they were like, why are you not reporting this? So we've got to get to the point where, number one, we obtain this legally, we have permission, the whole thing. And the timing of this comes after that contentious meeting between the family and the sheriff. Now, it's important to note that the sheriff's name is not on this document. It's signed by the Major Jones. And after talking with the uncle, Walter Penny, he told us when the funeral home showed it to him, he was furious. So he calls the sheriff directly. He's like, what is going on? And he contends that the sheriff said, I don't know what you're talking about. And then within hours after that, they got another email saying, okay, he can keep all this. The family can keep all this.
So the funeral home didn't have to comply with any of that. They were able to keep that because in a situation like this, such a tragedy, I'm sure the family...
They thought it was incredibly insensitive.
It was very insensitive. And it meant something to them maybe to have the items that were on his body when he died. Absolutely.
And they felt that it was retaliatory after that contentious meeting with the sheriff. Now, it's important to note the sheriff's name's not on that document. And after the uncle had a conversation with the sheriff, it ultimately didn't happen.
So the family then has this press conference after both of your reports. And, some of the words they used in that press conference were, this is petty, this is retaliation, this is poking the bear. And they're specifically really going after the sheriff, basically saying he, for whatever reason, felt like he was not being respected throughout this situation, and as a result, maybe retaliated. I mean, that's their message. So, what is really going on here? I mean, you have covered a lot of controversy in this particular sheriff's office under his regime since he was elected. And, other people have been fired. Other people have sued for wrongful termination. What is going on here?
Well, over the past 4 years, we have been able to report on what can be perceived as a pattern of what you could deem as moves, whether it's firings, reassignments, that you could view as retaliation. Going back to January of 2019, when we interviewed a couple of former deputies, Gray Spate and Stephen Williamson, right before Christmas in 2018, right after the sheriff was elected, they're marched into the office, boom, you're gone. They had great records, no issues, but they were interviewed about a guy named Teddy Patrick, who during the Donnie Harrison era used to conduct sensitivity training. He led them, and he was using homophobic language and, actually outed a deputy that no one in the class even knew was gay, turned to an Asian person, said, I guess you're good with chopsticks, things like that. They're interviewed. They just told the truth of what they heard. Ultimately, Teddy Patrick was demoted. So they felt that it was clear retaliation because Gerald Baker and Teddy Patrick are good friends, that once he took over, Teddy Patrick is promoted, they're gone. And in fact, when Stephen Williamson was walked out, it was Teddy Patrick who walked him out of the sheriff's office.
And so there's a history here. And you even told me in covering this story, you can't satisfy anyone because what happens is you have people saying, why aren't you reporting everything that we're telling you? But you have to confirm it. And then on the other hand, you have people who are close to the sheriff saying, well, you have a grudge.
Right. So that's, and this job well, that's the kind of thing that happens. So we've reported what you could deem as critical stories on the sheriff. But if I told you how many rumors we've chased in the past 4 years, it is far beyond what we've ever reported because we can't just report rumors.
Just to kind of wrap up this very important conversation, this sheriff is no longer going to be in office. He lost his election as the Democrat representing the ticket to Willie Rowe, who's going to run against Republican and former Sheriff Donnie Harrison in the November election. Do you think that this is going to change the tenor of the sheriff's office, regardless of which of those two men are elected?
I certainly hope so. Now, anytime there is a change in administration, people are going to get upset because, things get changed around. And so that's common. But the level of complaints that we got both inside and outside the sheriff's office went far beyond what we were used to. So then we have to chase that down. So for whoever wins, I certainly hope that they're as transparent as possible and make decisions based on what's best for the office and what's best for the county as opposed to what might be perceived as retaliation.
And finally, I think one of the things that is kind of confusing is if you are leaving office, which we know this sheriff is, why rock the boat?
Right. And I think there are layers to that because, number one, why at this point would you shake up the canine unit and move all these people around just with a few months left in your term? And if you are accusing people of just trying to attack the sheriff, what is the basis of them attacking the sheriff? To get you voted out? Well, that's already happened. So there's clearly concern beyond just trying to get rid of you because, he's already on the way out.
Gotcha. Thank you so much to WRAL's Colin Browder, and thank you, the listeners of the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Amanda Lamb.